This tiny camera showed me the future of consumer filmmaking. And the future, it's convenient and cinematic. Instead of bringing my cinema camera, I decided to buy this tiny camera for a 47-day trip through Vietnam. The goal of this trip was to create a cinematic travel video, and this is the story of how this tiny camera, the DJI Osmo Pocket 3, beat my cinema camera on taking this trip. I learned that the DJI Osmo Pocket 3 is truly better than any other camera in certain scenarios. Some features have absolutely blown me away when I learned to properly use them, and they have resulted into shots that I couldn't have captured with any other camera. However, there are also aspects of this camera that make me wish I brought something else on my trip. Oh my god. Based on this 47-day trip through Vietnam, I learned about the 6 pros and 4 cons of creating cinematic videos with the DJI Osmo Pocket 3. December 12, 2023, I finally pulled the trigger on this long anticipated trip. I bought my ticket to Vietnam and started thinking about the incredible landscapes I could capture with my cinema camera. However, pretty quickly I started to get doubts because I reminded myself of all of the stuff I needed to carry on this trip. I wanted to pack as light as possible, and they might call it the Blackmagic Pocket cinema camera, but I don't think anyone has ever managed to fit it in their pocket. And on top of that, the camera also comes with quite a heavy load. Lots of batteries because they suck, a bulky charger, big lens, CVest card reader. It's quite a lot. So I made a decision. I ordered the smallest, most convenient camera with the best possible quality. The newly released DJI Osmo Pocket 3. The next morning I woke up with a lot less money and only a little bit more camera because this thing is tiny. In fact, it's just as big as the lens on my cinema camera. This is also the first pro about this camera. It's small and very convenient. If you combine this camera with a fanny pack, you always have the camera safely stored on your belly, while at the same time you're able to pull it out and capture footage within seconds. People really underestimate the value of being able to shoot quickly when you're traveling. During the planning of your trip, you always think that you'll have enough time, but when you're actually traveling, the most special moments usually occur when you least expect them to. And during these special moments, you usually just can't be bothered to waste time pulling out your big camera. The convenience of this camera is definitely a huge benefit, and it actually led me to capture my best shot of my entire trip. Before I bought the camera, I obviously did do some research on the footage it's able to produce, and I never really considered it at first because I thought the footage would just look like any other action camera. However, I found out that this camera shoots 10-bit video in D-Log-M, and that means you can actually do some proper color grading, which makes the footage look a lot better. After hearing this, I did do some digging on YouTube to find out if there were people that put effort in grading this footage, and I was quite surprised with what I found. These videos helped me make my final decision because the footage did look cinematic and great. If you want to work with some DJI Osmo Pocket 3 D-Log-M footage yourself, there is a link in my Instagram bio for a free download. Also, I do thumbnail polls there and share some behind the scenes of this channel there, so check it out and give it a follow. The image quality of this camera is not incredible. I said it was great, but if we take a closer look at the spectrum of image quality, great comes around just before incredible. I think incredible is what my Blackmagic cinema camera shoots. This is quite obvious if we look at the camera and sensor size and the fact that one can use adaptable lenses, but it's fair to mention this. Occasionally, I just wish there was a bit more detail in the shadows and a bit more dynamic range. The Osmo Pocket 3, it's simply not a true cinema camera. It's not a cinema camera. So I had bought the Osmo Pocket with the Creator Combo, which means it came with a nice little carrying case that also included a mic that I didn't really plan on using, a useless attachable square, and a usable attachable battery rectangle. Unfortunately, this combo, it didn't come with ND filters, and ND filters are needed for cinematic videos because they create natural motion blur. The camera has a fixed aperture, so you need ND filters to lower the exposure and maintain a regular shutter speed. I bought these fixed ND filters which perform well and they are magnetic, and that's cool because they stick to the inside of the hard case. However, it also seems like this is designed for tiny people with long fingernails because getting them out there is really difficult. learn from my mistakes and get variable ND filters instead, so you don't have to swap them so often. This is what my entire camera bag looks like. A tiny camera and a drone.
It's small, lightweight and amazing for traveling. And even though the gear itself is small, I was able to create this masterpiece with it.
It's an absolute 10 out of 10 video. Another thing I loved about this camera is that I could simply charge it through USB-C. And I know most tiny cameras, they use USB-C these days, but being able to charge my phone, my drone, my camera with this 65-watt charger that I bought, that was very, very convenient as well. I'm so appreciative of it because I remember being a filmmaker back in the day, carrying all of these chargers to charge all of my film strips. So with the small camera package and my backpack, I headed to Vietnam. After I arrived, I learned about the most obvious strength of this camera, the stabilizer. So the big selling point of this camera is that you've got a tiny great gimbal included in your tiny camera. It's like you're getting a DJI RS3 included in your camera. The stabilization is great, makes the footage look great. I was able to just point that stick up while sitting at the back of a motorcycle like I'm leading an army. I just take a little peek at the monitor to see if the framing is right, and I just keep it up and it would lead to great footage 90% of the time. Sometimes the framing was horrible. The coolest feature of this camera, my personal favorite, it has gotten me incredibly cinematic shots. It's the object tracking feature that they call
Object Track.
Active Track. What this feature does is it allows you to select objects within your frame and then you can keep them at that exact position of your frame. Now what's cool about this is that you can use it to create this effect. I had contact with a prominent filmmaker about what this effect is called. This filmmaker is legit because people have told me this filmmaker will disrupt the entire industry soon. And apparently it's called a parallax shot. It involves keeping one part of the scene or object stationary in the frame while the camera moves around it. This creates a dynamic and visually engaging effect where the background or surrounding elements appear to shift perspective relative to the stationary subject. Starting the active track is super easy, you just tap on the screen twice. Once you've done that, you don't even have to look at your screen anymore. Try to make sure that the vertical axis of the Osmo Pocket is steady to prevent wobbly shots. Quick bonus tip, you can use the infamous ninja walk. The dumber you look, the better your footage will look. Pro number 6, object tracking. So the object tracking feature can be used to track objects, but that does not result in cinematic shots right away. However, in certain scenarios it does, and this shot right here is the perfect example of this. This shot is by far my most impressive shot from the whole trip. It was all unplanned and happened during a tour of the most impressive area in Vietnam, in Ha Giang. And the most surprising part of this shot is probably that I didn't even look or point my camera at these kids. So what happened was that I was sitting at the back of a motorcycle being quite focused. The road was quite tough. So then out of nowhere, these 3 kids on a scooter, they were riding beside us and they tried to overtake us. I couldn't believe my eyes. This kid in the front looked like he wasn't even 10 years old and he carried 2 other kids on the back. And even though we were having quite of a hard time because of the road, it was just this dirt difficult road, they were just chilling. The Osmo Pocket was also chilling in my fanny pack, so I pulled it out, I turned it on and a little cam, it boots up within seconds. And that's when all the stars aligned for the Osmo Pocket 3. This was the moment for it to show me what it was made of. I pressed twice on the little touchscreen to select the kids and the Osmo Pocket started doing its thing. Because of the active tracking feature, the camera kept the kids at the center of the frame throughout the entire shot. Couldn't have done that with any other big camera in that specific moment. I wouldn't have been able to carry a big gimbal in my fanny pack. The Osmo Pocket was the perfect camera for this spontaneous moment. Even though I am a fanboy of this tracking feature, I also have to be honest because there has been an instance where this feature completely ruined a shot for me. There was this cute family next to the road waving at everybody and we were about to ride past them. So me in the pocket, I tried to select this family, but because the touchscreen is so small, I selected the wall next to them. Since I'm not creating a documentary about Vietnamese soil or stones, I have to confess this shot was ruined. So the tiny monitor, it is a con, not only for making it difficult to select objects, but also sometimes you're not completely sure if a shot is in focus if you're shooting in manual focus mode. It is obviously a downside that comes with wanting a small camera. Also, I don't think things would be better if this camera had a bigger monitor, but I still have to mention this as a downside, a small downside. A somewhat bigger con, or the absolute biggest con of this camera for making cinematic videos, is the fixed focal length lens. The lens of the Osmo Pocket 3 is equivalent to a 20mm lens, and that is quite wide for a lot of shots. This simply makes the shots look less cinematic. Now, you can solve this by getting closer to your subject, but filming from such a close distance is just a bit awkward in these real life scenarios. People, they will feel that they're being recorded and they act less authentic. By being that close, it also feels a bit more like a vlog instead of a cinematic documentary. I know you can zoom in digitally. I did that with quite some shots, but another solution would perhaps be a small attachable zoom lens. I know the weight of such an add-on would probably be too much for the gimbal, but how cool would that be? They do make wide-angle lens add-ons for the camera. For cinematic shots, these are completely useless, but doesn't that mean that they can make a longer focal length lens attachment as well? I posted this great idea on my community tab and got a great response from someone. Fair enough. However, I'd like to point out that this was not given to me. I paid for it and I'm willing to pay extra for the wine. Getting a longer focal length or getting wine would be good business for DJI. And I have proof because there are a lot of search queries for cinematic shots with the Osmo Pocket every month. People don't just want to use this camera for vlogging. Another solution I came up with for a possible second Osmo Pocket 4 would be to make the lens inside of the camera more like a 35 or 50mm lens. And then the wide angle lens the attachment thingies, then those would be useful. Last con number 4 is that when you're shooting in D-Log M mode, the monitor, it shows you the footage in that color space, which is not very helpful for looking at your footage. Obviously, this could simply be fixed with a software update, so DJI, please give us an update for this. Final verdict. I love the camera. Using it was a great experience, a great travel experience as well. I didn't have to just travel and worry about my camera. The traveling itself was really nice. The footage looks great. Those features it has are also awesome and resulted into great shots. The 4 cons that I named, I can live with 3 of them, but the wide angle lens could potentially be a deal breaker for a future travel video for me. And the reason being is that I also brought a drone, and that drone shoots beautiful wide shots, also has a fixed lens. And I just think it would be nicer to mix that with more close-up, more intimate shots of people and things. However, I do still recommend this camera. It's small, has a gimbal, footage looks great, can be color graded. So if you're seriously considering the camera, check it out through the link in my description because that also supports the channel. Thanks for watching.